Good evening. It's Thursday, the 25th of August, and tonight we take a look back on the last couple of games for the Seasiders and ahead to this weekend where Blackpool back at home, hoping for better fortunes than their last outing. Tonight, I'm joined by three familiar faces. Good evening, Nick.
Good evening. I'll just unmute myself. Good evening, Tom.
Back off your holiday and feeling good?
Yeah, literally just back, something to eat, and then jumped on. So absolutely no prep whatsoever, but there's no change there.
Mate, your knowledge is invaluable either way. Matt, good evening, mate.
Evening. We all right?
Yeah, very well, mate. How are you?
All good. Similar to Nick, I've just got back from a jaunt, but I've been to B&M Bargains rather than on holiday, so it's not quite the same.
And the question is, did you pick up any bargains?
No. It was a wasted journey.
It's the sort of place you leave and then spend about 40 quid for no reason.
I wanted a very glamorous large bag of cat litter, but they didn't have any, so there we go.
Sensational. And on the subject of cat litter, and not in any way linked, good evening, Affers. How are you, mate?
Oh.
Cannot hear you. Not again,
Affers
mate.
Affers is gone again.
You're not on mute.
No.
You
Gremlins.
could do semaphore for where he's been.
Try again, mate. Anyway, we will move on while Joe sorts out his audio. We take sort of a quick general look at the last two outings. Matt, I'll start with you. Away day joys. We finally beat QPR in the first time in 50 years, and of course we win on Sky, which very rarely happens unless it's the playoffs. We obviously picked up a very good point on Saturday against neighbours Burnley. What impressed you most about sort of QPR and Burnley, maybe separately or both together?
Well, I suppose it's almost the opposite from each game that impressed me. I think that QPR impressed me really, the quality of the football, the pace of the football, the creativity of the football. And then going into Burnley, we were all really worried that we didn't have those things. The players that sort of made it tick against QPR weren't there. And yet the clock kept going, to use a terrible metaphor. And I think it was that we managed to be adaptable, find a way, find the result. We were creative, we were inventive, and again, actually, second half Burnley, we were quick. We pressed constantly and we attacked a lot. So it was really good. And I think I was just thinking, driving back from the unsuccessful trip for cat litter, I was thinking kind of out of the last three games, or the last 2.5 games, we've probably managed two halves of really good football. We've played well for kind of 80% of those games, really, from half time against Swansea, which is pretty good. So yeah, I've been impressed recently.
Joe, just test your audio, mate. No, sorry, mate.
Still on silent.
Nick, I'll come to you then.
We've got.
I'll come to you then, Nick. Just same question, really. Obviously, an extremely good win at QPR. I thought it was going to be a game where we struggled with their intensity and their quality. And of course, Burnley, don't need to say that just one of their players alone cost more than our whole squad plus our wage bill. So gutted to not come away with a win potentially, but incredible draw in the end.
Yeah, I'd echo what Mitch said, really. Kind of two different games. QPR, Patino was looking very good. Fiorini was looking very good. And then, Sod's Law, they both get injured. And you go into the Burnley game thinking, where's the creativity coming from outside of Josh Bowler? And, are we going to get anything out of the game? And 15 minutes in, you're 2-0 down and thinking it's game over. And I was just really impressed with Michael Appleton, the way he can kind of take stock at half time if things aren't happening, make changes, and it makes a real difference in the second half. He's done it a few times. He's not afraid to take players off early, and it really made a difference. And just the way the second half against Burnley, up until Carey getting his red card, there was only one team looking like they were going to win it. It wasn't a smash and grab like we saw sometimes last season, say, I don't know, Sheffield United, for example, great win, but we rode our luck. It was fully deserved point in, and we could well have, gone to get all three. So been really impressed with what he's doing. And QPR, it looked like the first time for me where you could say, I can see what the plan is here, and that, it's starting to gel a little bit. You then lose those two players. But we found a way against Burnley, and the spirit in the second half to come back was absolutely fantastic, and a thoroughly deserved point.
Yeah, absolutely. Just good evening to everyone in the chat. Keep your comments coming in tonight and we'll get as many up on the screen as possible. We'll start with an optimistic one, Matt. Burnley match was the best I heard for a long time for the whole season. We will get to the playoffs. I'll have whatever Rich is drinking potentially.
Oh yeah, I mean, if we play to the absolute top of our game all the time, who knows? But I think realistically, I'll take same again in terms of, I said it on the last pod, same again but more fun, I think, is what we're in for.
Yeah, it will certainly be, I think, nice, and we did witness it at Burnley as well. It kind of felt like I don't say a playoff kind of chasing match, but at the same time, it didn't feel like the start of the season, in the sense of there were 3-1 down and we created so many opportunities. It was quite an end-to-end sort of match, had sort of a cut feel to it in terms of us just going for it and actually, I'll say not caring, but being very decisive with our attacks. Actually, we created, I think, 4 big chances in those games, and we're going to need that sort of creativity going forward, Nick.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, on Saturday, assuming Josh Bowler doesn't get sold tomorrow, he's probably going to be our focal point again with the injured. We've got the creative players who are going to be missing, and they're a decent side. It's going to be a real tough one on Saturday, but we can be confident with the way we played in the second half against Burnley. The team probably, we'll come on to later on, almost picks itself in most of the positions, but I think Appleton's done really well, and we can go into the game with a lot of confidence.
Joe, is your mic working?
I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah,
yes.
We've got some audio, mate. I will let you have your say then. Last two, how do you feel? Guys summed up really just sort of contrasting opinions on both games, where we didn't think we sort of have a hope against Burnley due to the injuries that we picked up in a very good performance at QPR. How did you feel the last two games sort of panned out, and what were you quite proud of?
Well, I famously predicted on Twitter that we were going to go into the Bristol City game with 1 win and 4 losses. I couldn't see us getting anything from QPR or Burnley, purely down to the fact, not so much us, but the fact that the start that those two teams had made, I thought both of them would just be a bit too strong for us, with us being clearly a work in progress after the Stoke game. Very pleasantly surprised. I thought we were excellent against QPR. Very much, archetypical, prototypical away team performance. I wouldn't call it smash and grab, but it was like more or less the perfect away performance. And Burnley was just your typical derby game. At half-time, I was absolutely delighted that I missed the game. And then at full-time, I was the opposite. I was like, that's probably one of the absolute standout games that people will be talking about for years go by afterwards. Brilliant end-to-end game. And, Burnley are no mugs. I said at the start of the season they were my team that I fancied to win the league. Maybe they're not going to win the league, but they'll certainly be top 6. They'll certainly be up there. And we more than hung with them. In fact, to show a lot of character, I hate being one of those people, character, passion and all that nonsense, but we did show a lot of character and a lot of passion, considering the start we've had regarding injuries and absolutely ridiculous suspensions, but we'll get onto that later. But yeah, I cannot fault the effort of the manager and the players enough. They've been absolutely brilliant so far this season. And we're going to have to dig in for the next few months with all the injuries that we're having, unless we pull a few rabbits out of the hat in the next week.
Yeah, absolutely. We're coming to talk about Bristol City now. Just a quick evening to Team Ralph. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for seeing the LA chant in the chat. I really appreciate that. Good, gets in the mood for Saturday. We'll come on to Bristol City then, Nick. Just sort of an introduction to them. They sit 7th in the long list of teams on 7 points, which Blackpool being one of those. They're a really decent side. They've got exceptionally good young talent with the likes of Masengo in the middle, and they've got fantastic finishing ability. I'm a massive admirer of Wyman, who the league undoubtedly knows after last season and his start to this season. What are you expecting from a side who will undoubtedly be different to the one we played at Bloomfield Road in the victory against them?
Yeah, I think last season they had a poor season, didn't they? This season, I think they've won the last 3, including in the cup.
2 in the league.
I saw a bit of their game against Cardiff last Sunday. Is it Conway? I think he was playing. He impressed me. And obviously, Wyman in this league, he's a standout player. So I think it's going to be a real tough afternoon. We're missing 2 of our most creative players so far in the middle of the park, and Carey obviously suspended now. So it's going to be difficult, but we've still, as we've shown in the last couple of games, we can still perform to a very decent standard. So there's no reason to go into it with any fear. And if we perform, there's no reason why we can't get the 3 points.
Yeah, absolutely. And Matt, they're a team in the last 3 games, more so in the last 2 league games. They made obviously wholesale changes against Wycombe, but nonetheless a really good victory. They're a team who the last 2 clean sheets, 2-0 wins against Luton and Cardiff. Cardiff, a really physical side, as we know. They've been pressing with a lot of intensity in the last few games, especially up front, and been more sort of mature at the back, stringing passes together. Do you think their intensity in the middle with the injuries we have are going to have a big impact on the game?
Yeah, I mean, it can do. I mean, I won't pretend to know a lot about Bristol City, but I'll do a sort of knock-off Sean impression, really, in that I've had a little bit of a look at the numbers. And I think what's notable is they've got quite a few players who can carry the ball. And I've got quite a few players who've scored as well. They seem to share the scoring around quite a lot. Obviously, Vyman is a key for them as you picked out. I think he's got 3 goals and 2 assists in 5 starts. But outside of him, they've got they seem to. I think they've got 6 scorers of 9 goals or something like that. And they when you look at the dribbling stats, they seem to have. They don't really have a bowler type player, but they seem to have 5 players who like to carry the ball. Rather than sort of one focal point. And yeah, I mean, having players in the middle that can carry the ball in some ways may play to our weakness, in the sense that if we are forced to play a more workmanlike we will be forced to play a more workmanlike midfield. We might have to return to more of the spoiling style of game that we were very good at last year, and I certainly wouldn't bet my house on Patino and Fiorini playing that spoiling type game successfully. But with Dougal and Connolly, and depending on how the team lines up, possibly Virtue or whoever in midfield, if you go with the 3, whoever it might be, that might actually be more successful in countering them. I mean, it's not going to be more successful in going forward against them, but then that's probably a question for later on how best to attack. I think that made sense what I said.
Yeah, you're actually really spot on. They've got, throughout their team, actually, I don't think they've got a really weak position, and that's where I think they differ from last season. I spoke to a couple of Bristol City fans sort of during the week, and they said they are in a form of sort of transition, but they've got some really decent players. Naismith at the back as well. Kai Naismith is really experienced and is stabilised that team a lot. Just touching upon a point Matt just made, Joe. Do you think, to quote a Sky Sports commentator, do you think it's in our DNA now to spoil an opposition side a bit like the predecessor of Appleton did? And could we do that against Bristol City on Saturday?
Sorry for the cop-out answer. I genuinely don't know. Like you say, the team kind of picks itself at the minute because of the injuries. And maybe by default, we'll be set up a little bit better against them, because I think if we try and kind of go toe-to-toe playing football with them while we're learning this new system, with Nigel Pearson being there for a while and them having essentially more or less the same squad that they've had for the past couple of seasons, I think they're going to be more used to their system, whereas we're still very much, I know I said it before, work in progress, but I think with the likes of Connolly and Dougal in there, like Matt said, instead of your Patinos and your Fiorinis, I think we'll have a bit more bite in midfield, a bit more in your face that we might need to disrupt them. So hopefully we'll be able to stop them from playing their type of football, because I feel if they impose themselves on the game, we could be in for a long day.
Yeah, Nick, if it ticks for them, then they've already shown they can beat decent sides. I would say the Cardiff victory is comfortable, but they certainly made it more difficult for Cardiff to input their game on themselves. And obviously they scored 2 goals and kept out a very physical side. I'll ask the same question to you, really, on Matt's point. Do you think Appleton, or do you think this team could spoil sort of the opposition play and stop them playing, or do you think we just have to go out and sort of do what we did against Burnley and counter-attack them where they can look reasonably vulnerable?
Yeah, I think that that will probably be the plan. Give it Josh Bowler and hope he can beat 2 or 3 men. It's probably going to be Connolly and Dougal in the middle, isn't it, with and other. So there's probably not going to be a lot of creativity coming through the middle. So you're looking at, Bowler. We'll see. Most of the teams we play in this division are going to have, bigger budgets than us, players who are worth more than our players on the whole. That's going to happen week in, week out, but doesn't mean we can't go and compete. And I think, Appleton will be very, very prepared. He'll know what they're about. He'll have done his homework and he'll have a plan for them. So, like I said earlier, we can still be confident. We've got key injuries, but we can still hopefully get a result.
Yeah, Joe, we're at home. And I just want to touch back to sort of the Burnley performance and the QPR one, to be fair, because you wouldn't believe it, because we were on Sky and they were miserable after the 90 minutes about their mourning their loss of QPR and wanted a big win for them so they can rave about them. But we actually had 2 or 3 chances at the end, and I would say disappointed that we didn't score, but obviously grateful we won. But we Corbin, you had some big chances towards the end, and at Burnley we created 4 or 5 clear chances. And how do you think that's going to keep coming together, or do you think sort of that was just in the momentum of the Burnley game?
Difficult to say. I think it's just like we touched on earlier. It's the new process, the new style of play. I think it's just eventually slowly gelling. I thought, like you say, we created more at Burnley. Whether that was the case, it was just one of them frenetic, something in the air, derby type games where it was just a bit mad and everybody was just like on one, up and down, and end-to-end derby game. I don't know, but I mean, Corbino's had a fair bit of stick from the fans, and I thought he took his goal very well at Burnley. It was like, it's a one-on-one, you can't miss. But you've seen many a player miss a one-on-one, especially when they're wearing tangerine. And I thought he took his goal well. He had a couple of chances at QPR as well. I thought in the 5-minute cameo that he had at QPR, he looked better than he did in his previous performances away at Stoke and at home against Swansea. I think he's slowly getting there, and he's playing on the opposite side that he's used to. I think he's more of a right-sided player than a left-sided player. So who knows? I'm not going to say if Bowler goes, he's the answer, because I'd probably get locked away in a mental asylum.
That'd probably be your first prediction you get right, to be fair, mate, because he's going to have to be the answer.
Well, yeah, because we're clearly not bloody bringing anybody in, are we? But I think he's doing a decent job. He's getting there. I think I said the other day that everybody was on Richard Keogh's back when he first started. He was the worst footballer in the world. He was garbage. I'm not saying that Corbino is going to end up being the new Richard Keogh, but if he can put in half as good performances, then it won't go amiss.
Yeah, Matt, I've got 2 questions for you, but as Joe just raised a really interesting point. He obviously replaced Bowler against QPR, and he actually looked frightening in the latter stages of that game and much more comfortable taking on his man. Against QPR, that was.
Yeah, no, I don't know, because people, I was noticed in our group, people going, Corbin, who looks really good, and I don't want to be the miserable one, but I felt like 2 chances fell to him as opposed to he made 2 chances, which might be unfair. I don't know, but I'm still to be convinced by him, in the sense that, Bowler has absolutely outstanding technical skills. He can kill a ball out. And, there was one the other day where it went way up in the air and any other player on earth would have headed it. But we know that Bowler can't head. But he sort of held off his man and brought it down at his feet with he was just genius. And I mean, partly he was making of the fact he can't head the ball, but it was genius the way he brought it down. And I haven't seen that from Corbinu yet. I mean, I'm not saying he's a bad player. He pressed really well against Burnley. He did do that work really well. He got his goal. He took it really, really well. But there are those moments where the ball, and I don't want to get on 2 players' backs at once and sound like the world's most negative man. But there are moments where he looks exactly like CJ Hamilton, where the ball will come to him and it'll just bounce off him, or he'll kind of punt it to go after it, and he'll punt it too long and it'll roll out of play. I think Joe makes a really good point, actually, and I suppose in a way this is what the point you're making is, if he is playing on the wrong side all the time, then maybe I'm judging him playing on the wrong side. And usually I would be the first to say, well, you've got to give that player a bit of slack, because they're playing out of position. Like a couple of seasons ago when Virtue was playing on the right wing and everyone was slating Virtue, saying he was the worst player on earth. And you're like, well, he's playing on the right wing and he's not a right winger. He's doing a job for the team. So I'll reserve judgment, but I am yet to be convinced that Corbinu is the answer.
Potentially not the answer, but I think Sean and I share the same thought. I said, I think we can own Theo for the next 3 years, and we still don't know whether he's good or not. And I think just my point on the QPR one, I don't disagree with you slightly. I think he made those chances by flicking it past his man and cutting into the box. And yes, the pass back to the keeper didn't help, or he could have cut it across to Yates, but he didn't make those chances. He created that space. And the substitution itself from Appleton relieved a ridiculous amount of pressure as well, because he carried that ball past the halfway line, skipped past the men a few times and got into their box. And if we did manage to score the second, it would have been an absolute genius substitution. It's just he wasn't clinical enough, unfortunately.
I suppose it was a bit like, because they were throwing everything forward and we were kind of like 2-on-1 or 2-on-2 at the back, and it was the fact that was quite an unusual state for the game to be in, if that makes sense. It was a bit like a couple of years ago when Apter came on against Wigan. And he looked brilliant against Wigan, but Wigan were 4-0 down and had given up, and there's always that slight, in those game situations, it's always actually quite hard to make a true judgment of a player, if that makes sense. I'm probably being a bit harsh on his.
No,
he just got the
really
chance.
Fair point, to be fair.
An unusual situation.
Nick, I'll come to you because you've been quiet, and I was going to ask Matt about his 2 favourite players. But Lavery and Yates both getting goals on Saturday. Clearly, Lavery having probably one of the worst games he's had in Tangerine, but the goal will certainly help his confidence. And Yates, again, got his goal, and finally, after the Swansea miss, hopefully can kick on from here. Do you think they both will, or do you think do you think Yates is going to take it in his stride now?
Well, hopefully. I mean, I think it'll have done the world of good. Lavery in particular, he was having a bit of a frustrating day, wasn't he, against Burnley? He'd missed that chance in the first half, and I think we said on the Burnley pod there was a moment not long before he'd scored where he'd got into a really good position and just played a cross to nobody, overhit it, and there was a few people getting on his back. He's put the ball in the back of the net the same as Yates. So hopefully there'll be, depends if they both play, obviously, but it's all you can ask for your strikers, isn't it, for them to hit the back of the net, and thankfully they both have done. I think it'll do the confidence a lot of good. And to be fair, Lavery and Yates, they always put a shift in, and he was getting in the positions, and it just, particularly Lavery, it just wasn't quite happening for him. It'd bounce off him, or the ball wouldn't quite, drop right, but he just keeps going the same as Jerry does. So I think that's all you can ask from your strikers. They're not probably going to be prolific, but they both put a hell of a shift in, Both scored against Burnley, so hopefully they'll both kick on. We're not blessed with loads of forward we're not blessed with loads of options anywhere on the pitch at the moment, are we? So, there's a good chance they'll both be involved on Saturday, and hopefully they'll continue to create chances and get a couple of goals. All right, for me, we'll come on to the team prediction, but based on what I saw on Saturday, I think they've both done enough to earn the place. Because it's harsh, isn't it? If your strikers score and they get dropped, it can it can knock the confidence, can't it?
Well, we'll come on to that point in a minute, but I think Appleton's quite ruthless in what he does. But Joe, just touching back on Lavery, we saw last season probably 4 or 5 times off the top of my head that he is a very good finisher at this level from where he came from. And I think Nick's right. It'll probably be harsh not to play him. And, we could get a chance on Saturday and we're 1-0 up within a couple of minutes. Who knows? But you think about, I think it was Blackburn. No, sorry, Barnsley at home, where Keshi done one of the most ridiculous assists ever, but he scored from a tight angle. We had the Hull game, the Millwall game, where he slotted it in when there was like 2 players on the line. He is a very decent finisher, in my opinion, and I think he's just having a rough start to the season. What are your thoughts on him so far?
You can never question the guy's work rate, certainly, even if in front of goal isn't going for him. I'll be honest, I don't think he's been the same striker since his hamstring injury against Blackburn. I don't know what it is, whether it's like a mental thing, whether he's scared of like going full pelt and doing his hamstring again. But especially the last 3 games, I don't think you can fault the work rate. I think that front 3 of Lavery, Yates and Bowler is just starting to click now, which is great, seeing as we'll probably sell Bowler in the next 7 days. But I digress.
Sorry, Karen, mate.
Yeah, I think that front 3 could be potentially very exciting for the season, but I genuinely think that we're going to cash in on Bowler in the next few days, so it's irrelevant, isn't it?
We'll come on to talk about the squad in a minute, but I thought against QPR he was actually really good. I think he was quite committal, 100% committed in terms of running at defenders. He obviously went in for a slide tackle. It was against QPR, wasn't it? No, was that Swansea? Yeah. Swansea. He came on straight away, pelted through the defender, won the ball, got a yellow card, and obviously changed the game against Swansea as well. But I think for me, it will click for Lavery, and I was gutted when I heard we enticed Millwall into buying him, but didn't sell him because of an injury. Maybe that's what the Millwall manager said, but we'll see. But I'm really I'm glad he is going to stay, and I think he'll kick on from me. He probably won't bag sort of 10, 15 goals, but I certainly think it'll be a much bigger sort of help to the team than being an inconvenience to the starting lineup like some of our players. But Matt, I'll come to you then. He got the shape wrong, I think, Appleton, in my opinion, on Saturday, but he soon changed it with Bowler moving out wide. How good, and you've touched on this already, but maybe you can elaborate, how good, in your opinion, is his decisiveness when it's come to substitution so far and changing tactics?
Yeah, he's well, I think Nick said this right at the beginning, that he's astute. His in-game management is very astute. His predecessor was possibly quite good at scouting the opposition and setting up and getting that right. And I've not seen enough of Appleton to make a judgment on whether he gets it right at the beginning more often than he gets it wrong. But he certainly knows how to make a halftime change, and he certainly knows how to make a change as we go through the game. Bowler in the middle, Bowler out wide, going to sort of 4-2-4 almost against Burnley, really, really pushing players up against their back line and not letting them have any space at all to play out from the back, which they clearly had shown they wanted to do and weren't very good at. That was brave, but it was effective. And I think pretty much every game I've seen managed under Appleton, there has been that sort of burst of something in the second half. Even the pre-season friendlies, really, that I saw, pretty much followed that pattern as well, of being a little bit languid in the first half, but then that burst of energy and those tactical changes in the second half and life there. So yeah, he is decisive, and the players really seem to know what they're doing when they come on. They seem to know what they're doing and play with purpose. And the change after the goal against Burnley as well, you know, that was one that sort of, I think a lot of people raised an eyebrow at, me included, that the players had combined to get the goal, and they were both brought off. And he went through with it, and he was proven right, because we really could and should have gone on and won that game barely on the balance of chances. So yeah, I think his in-game management is excellent, which is a real step up from his predecessor in that respect.
Yeah, Nick, you touched upon it and sort of took the words out of my mouth. Really said it'd be harsh if we dropped him, but my point was he scored, and then after the celebration he was hoiked off, because Appleton will do what he wants to do, and he will make those decisions and sort of live by them. So I personally think is unbelievably refreshing, rather than wait until the 80th minute and you're bringing on someone who's not going to have any impact on the game and you're 2-0 down. So what's your thoughts been on Appleton's in-game management so far?
Echo what Mitch said, and I've mentioned it previously. I think, you know, he won't wait. Excuse me. He won't wait he won't give it 15 minutes of the second half. You know, he'll if he wants to make a change, he'll do it at half time. He doesn't hang about. He's very quick to make those changes. And to be fair, when he's done them, they've made a real difference. You know, he did it at Stoke. He's done it at a couple of the home games. Did it at Burnley. And like I say, you know, just after we scored, he makes 3 changes. There was a guy behind me at Burnley going absolutely crazy at Appleton when he made those triple subs, booing. What are you doing? You don't know what you're doing. You know, and you get the thrill and got to turn around and look at him and go, you've gone a bit quiet. It's one of the things that's really impressed me about him. You know, he's tactically very astute, and if something isn't working, he will not hang about. And loads of managers do, don't they? Not just our previous manager. You see it a lot. They'll get to half time and go, oh, we'll give it another 15 minutes. And it's not been working for 45, so why would it suddenly start working in the second half, you know? And he just won't hang about, and he'll make the change. So I think he's... Sorry, go on.
No, I just said he sort of eliminates the reasoning for us to concede again or play poorly by trying to change it. And if that repeats itself, then great. But if it changes, then he's been brave enough to make that right decision.
There's also a lot of responsibility in it as well, because I think that thing where managers give it another 15 minutes is always kind of, the message must be, right, lads, I've set you up correctly, so you go out and put it right because you've not been playing well. And actually, as a player, if the manager is going to go like, look, it's not working, you know, I've picked a team, I've not got it right, so we're going to change it. You're going to go over there, you're going to come off, you're going to come on, go out and have a go then. It's actually the manager taking responsibility for what's going on, as opposed to just always giving that message that, you know, on the pitch, it's your job to fix it. And if we're not winning, therefore, it's not my tactics, it's you're not playing right. Does that make sense, what I said?
Yeah, no. Yeah. You've summed up perfectly. He's being brave, isn't he? And it's an admission that it's not working, so therefore he needs to try something different, which, as you said before, our predecessor and other managers are more reluctant to do. But Alan makes a great point. I think Appleton is looking to nail his colours to the mast with us. He's craving success, and so are we. I think it's a great fit for both. I think it's, yeah. Thanks, Alan. I think, as I just said, really, his putting his point on it, and you know, he wants us to do well. And I think he's showing us that he does care, and naturally it's his job. But you know, I think he's proven all the fans wrong in their initial opinions of him, or a lot of the fan base. Just devil's advocate question then, Joe, would he be this brave if we only had 3 substitutions?
Probably not. I think obviously, saying that, it does help teams that have like a bigger squad, and at the minute we don't. So
but he's still made those changes, hasn't he? Regardless of the squad size, every game at half time, I think he's made a substitution so far.
Yeah, and like you say, if it was the previous manager, then we'd be waiting till at least the 65th, 70th minute, even if we go a goal down and things are absolutely clear as the nose on your face that we're not going to turn things around. Appleton's much more proactive than the previous manager, and that can only be a good thing.
Just before we go on to some points the patrons have brought up and some really good discussion points for us. Nick, I'll come to you. Where do we win this game Saturday? So it's going to sound really Michael Owen-esque when you state the obvious, but for me, they could really run away with it in terms of their ability to control football matches at the moment with the momentum they have. But it also could quite be a cagey affair if we're both pressing in spells. And I think this is what by far, if not one of the toughest test of the season, a real test of our sort of tactical ability. I think midfield's generally going to be quite key. And my point when I said to Sean, we're going to talk about Theo, is he good enough in the 10 for you to sort of replace Carey?
It's early days. You know, I think Sean mentioned on the previous pod, he does some really good work off the ball. For me, on it, the jury's out. I know he took his goal really well against Burnley, but there's times where you're kind of willing him to take his man on, and he'll stop and come back inside, and that's perhaps because he's not playing in his right position. So you can't be too harsh on him. And again, because it's only 5 or 6 games into the season, I mean, we'll come on to the team selection. He's probably going to be playing because we haven't really got a lot of choices, have we? There's Virtue, I suppose, but not convinced on that one. So we will see. I think in terms of where we can win it, obviously, you know, if he's not sold in the next 24 hours, Josh Bowler is our danger man. No doubt they'll probably double up on him like most teams do. But you know, we will see. We'll see. I think it's going to be very, very tight. But like I said earlier, you know, we can still hopefully get the win. I think it's probably down to Josh Bowler for me though, because when he performs, then you know teams find it very hard to live with him. But it just depends. Like I say, they might double or triple up, and then it makes it difficult for us. And we've not got that creativity in the middle of the park, have we? With what will probably be Connolly and King Kenny, I would have thought.
Yeah, I'd think if we played like we did at Swansea, I mean, it's not going to be as hot, and we naturally might not leave the press as much as we do. But if we did, and they're going to be much more of a killer instinct, especially like you say, they play like a 3-4-1-2, so they will crowd over the corners a bit with Lavery and Bowler, so and then hit us on the counter potentially. But that's where I think it become quite cagey. But we'll certainly see. But we're getting on to 40 minutes now, and we're going to go on to some points that the podcast group has made and some points they wanted us to talk about, and I think some of them are excellent. But Joe, we'll start with you because you'll be professional as ever when it comes to this man. Kevin Stewart, imaginary or real? He had a similar timeline to Gabriel in terms of his injury. I said at the start of the season that this will be the last. We won't see him in Tangerine again. But that came from Niall. What are your thoughts on the elusive Kevin Stewart?
You know, all snarkiness and, you know, aside, I feel sorry for the guy because, you know, clearly he's a professional footballer. That's his thing. I know he's got his little podcast thing on the side, but it must be super frustrating for him because he had the potential to have a very good career. He was at Liverpool, wasn't he? And then he was at Hull when they were doing all right in the Championship, and it's a shame for the fella because obviously I don't know if it's a reoccurring injury that keeps happening or he's just very unlucky, but you know, he's made out of twiglets, isn't he? Bless him. It's a shame because he's a very, very good footballer. Arguably, when he's fit, one of the first names on the team sheet. But yeah, just a shame. Don't know how long he's got left on his contract, but I suggest we probably won't be renewing it when it comes up.
Yeah.
And that's purely down on his injuries, not his ability. Because as far as his footballing ability goes, he's, like I say, he's one of the first names on there.
Would you like a warm-up stat for later, but based on Kevin Stewart?
Please
go for it.
Okay. There was something I was reading the other day about injury-prone Blackpool players, and I ended up having a look at Coidy's career stats. Danny Coyd, by the age of 22, had started more games of football than Kevin Stewart has started now at the age of 29, which I think, puts it into perspective that I like Athers. I feel very sorry for the lad. He's, I've said it before on here. He's a career of he's a real talent that could have been something. If Coidy by the age of 22 had started more league games of football than Stewart ever has, I think that puts into the fact that he has always had this fragility to him. Always.
I think the most he's played in a season, 19 games. Someone said
Something
it
like
at Burnley.
Yeah.
So it's not just for us, is it? And like the other guys have said, it's a shame because if he's fit and playing week in, week out, he's arguably our best midfielder, if not one of
He is by
our
far our best
players.
player. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you just dream of a fit Stewart with Patino and Fiorini. Like, wow, we really are onto something there. But it's a dream.
Yeah, I've said it 100 times. He's our best player, and just unfortunately the worst player in a sense of his injury. But I don't think he'll play for us again personally. But whether that's a mutual agreement of his contract or whether he's just not named in the squad, but we'll have to see. I don't know. Sean or someone or one of the group might be able to say. Do we name R23 again? I take it come Thursday. That's another deadline for us. I take it
25, isn't it?
25. Yeah. Well, I take it we have to rename it again on the 1st. Or can you just take players out? I don't know. I think once you name it...
I think once they're named, but if there's injuries, you can replace them. Like if the long-term injuries.
We had that weird thing last year where we didn't name Medine, did we? And then he just appeared and we named it. It's like, we've not named Medine. And then there was another rumour that, there's been a big bust-up. And then like a week later... he was just there again. It was like, we've just named him. So I don't know. I don't know if we named all 25 and left people out or whatever last year. I don't know.
I heard you wore black all that week until he was named Matt. Moving on to the next point. I think I'll start with this one, but it's from Liam. He says, good start to the season, or is it papering over the cracks? I think it's a bit of both. Nick, I'll come to you after, but I see it like this. I think with the current squad, we've got Appleton's making it work in the sense of, I know there's only 5 games in, but I think we're coming to see what he can do with the players we currently have with the additions that he's in, albeit 4 on loan. It's clearly a decent sort of tactical, outfit, and we have the ability to hurt teams, but at the same time, 2 injuries and we start to lose almost every game, in my opinion, and that's due to the inability to field a decent side with the tools that he wants to do to the job. We haven't signed any players when we said there'd be money there for the players. We haven't been able to close a deal for one reason or the other. And we're now got a week left and we're probably going to sell our best asset with a sprint to the line, trying to maybe get Diallo in on loan or something like that from Man United. It's just, for me, it's just simply not good enough. We've known since, I think Walsh said on Twitter, and we've said this 100 times, we've known since February that we were safe, and we still don't have the ability to sign many players on a permanent. That's going to continue to improve our squad and grow the team. And I'm not interested in spending millions on players. I'm interested in getting the right players, a la Dom Thompson, who wouldn't have been a lot of money, and just players in midfield that could do a job. We probably could have got Dele Bashiri if we put a bid in immediately. That was somewhat, going to twist Sheffield Wednesday's arm, and now he's turned into Kaka. He scored like 5 goals since, one from like 35 yards on Tuesday. Probably not going to sign him now. Obviously, couldn't get Brannigan for one reason or the other, and we're weak in the midfield. We're weak up front. We're weak on the wings, and arguably we're weak at fullback as well. And we're 4 injuries like we experienced last season away from being significantly weak. When you look at other sides in this league, with the likes of Hull, etc., we are going to be a very weak outfit if we don't sign players.
But other than that, things are great.
I think I genuinely really happy with the start of the season, but my second point unfortunately overrides my emotions quite a lot, as you could probably tell.
We need to have like a.
To be fair, you are preaching. You're preaching to the choir.
Come on, we've still got number 14, Gary Medine.
Yeah, and we've got players to come back as well, haven't we? But we do need
in October.
Yeah, I get that, and it is a little bit of probably for the next few weeks, certainly till.
So as long as we get no more injuries in the next 2 months, we'll be fine.
The question
We
was
get
to
an injury
Nick. The
every
question was to
bloody
Nick,
day,
Joe. Shut up.
granted.
You know, Patino and Fiorini back in, things look very different, don't they? So we did. I'm not saying we don't need to do business. We absolutely do, and I'm guessing a lot of it might be down to what happens with Josh Bowler, because we'll have a bit more money to spend then. My worry is that it happens last minute and it's too late to get replacements in. And if he does go, then and we don't get replacements, then yeah, I agree, we could be in serious trouble, because even on an off day, he's still usually our most likely player to make something happen. And I'm sure, I know we haven't got deals across the line, but I would like to hope we're still working on it. I don't know if it's just down to, when we're agreeing it's coming down to wages or whatever, and we will have a budget, and we can't break that. I get that. And Josh Bowler will be very, very hard to replace. Players like that are players who you talk about in 20 years' time, and they don't come along every season. So, we're probably not going to replace him, but what we might be able to do is make the squad stronger in more positions, if you like, rather than, just a match winner. It's what have we got now? 6 days to go before the window closes.
Literally,
so
we'll probably be doing a pod based on transfer deadline day.
Yeah, and I know there's a few clubs interested in Bowler, isn't there? I think Forest are one of them. Watford have been mentioned. There's Fulham and Bournemouth.
Fulham as well, yeah.
Well,
so who knows?
If Blackburn sells Brett and Diaz, which is looking likely, they're going to have 12 to 15 million. They probably test the waters a little bit as well.
Yeah, and if it's 4 or 5 clubs, then maybe they get into a bit of an auction situation and we get more than we're expecting for him. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I'm optimistic, and hopefully we will get a couple in. But whoever it is, we don't need squad players, do we? We need real quality to make a difference to the first 11. That's the key thing for me.
Yeah, Matt,
but I don't think you're replacing Josh Bowler though, because he's just
no, you can't. But at the same
players,
time, if Matt, if you said to me that we sell Bowler, but we get in Dele, Bashiri, George Hurst, for example, on permanence, and you get sort of maybe Diallo on loan to replace Bowler, if you get 3 good quality players, unfortunately you twist my arm and you probably say yeah for the better of the squad, because he's going to go eventually on a free anyway. But you can't replace. Don't get me wrong, if you said to me now keep Bowler and stay up, or sell and but risk sort of not being reinvested into the squad, and you see where you're at, then I'm obviously going to say let him go on a free at the end of the season. We'll keep this, we'll enjoy him because it's worth doing more than 2.5 million staying up anyway.
Well, he's worth 7.5 million potentially, isn't he?
Well, you've got players like Gibbs White going for 42 million. I'm not saying his end product and his stats, the underlying stats for Bowler are quite evidently, it's more of he's into the box, doesn't score and doesn't assist than it is, his moments of magic we can see on a week-in-week basis. If you looked at his performances on paper as a winger, you think, yeah, it's all right. But when we watch him, it's the reason he drums up so much interest. But my beef with the situation is players like Gibbs White, etc., undoubtedly an amazing talent, are going for 42 million. Bowler shouldn't be going for 5, let alone 6, let alone 7. We should be rinsing Forest for everything they've got if they want to sign him.
Yeah, I mean, but my point about 7.5 million is that's essentially the difference between the money in the league below, and that's the bottom line. That's the minimum.
Absolutely.
Never mind 2.5 million, because we can talk about hypothetical future signings. People have banged on about Rodgers and whoever else. We can talk about hypothetical signings, but at the moment we have Josh Bowler and his numbers. I mean, yeah, okay, his numbers aren't spectacular, but his numbers within our side are spectacular. I think he's had, and I've not looked at this since the last game, but I think this will still be roughly right. He's had 40% of our shots on goal, or thereabouts. That's a lot to lose. He's averaging something like 3.8 successful dribbles per game. That's way, way above 99.9% of other Championship players. He's one division leading player in any metric. and he's the one player that terrifies the opposition. He's the one player who has the I'm trying to think, the magnetic effect on other teams and pulls them out of shape simply by being there. Nick said before, on a bad day, but Bowler can be having an absolute stinker, but he's still worth something because the opposition cannot possibly take the risk on him. And we've seen other wingers over the last couple of years that we've brought in have not had that effect. We've seen, bless him, and he's doing well at Portsmouth. We've seen Owen Dale sort of running up and down the wing, doing some hopeful step overs and not really achieving anything. We've seen CJ toe pointing into the corner and legging it after it. And these players are not, they're not anywhere near the class of that lad. So
but they are our backup wingers. That's the sad thing.
Yeah. And that compared to Bowler, they're not even backup. There's something different. So if it's up to me, if we can keep him, I keep him. I keep him every single day of the week. Every single day of the week. I said it. Last January I said let's stop playing accountancy simulator, and this, I think Bowler's playing as well as he's ever done in the last couple of games.
Yeah.
I really, really do. And if we can keep him, we keep him, because I think he's really enjoying playing up front with Lavery and Yates and being in the sort of a more fluid front three and being part of a front three where all three of them are expected to be in on goal, and he's not just having to sort of, he's not playing 4-4-2 as an inverted winger in a 4-4-2, which doesn't particularly make sense. This is a season where that lad could put up some spectacular numbers in that formation.
Yeah, I completely agree. Point well made. 10 minutes to go, so we'll move on to the next point. Just a very quick one. Joe, over to you. How many players that are out improve our first 11? So Patini, Fiorini, Keshi, Medin's now back, so you can't count him in.
Beasley,
yeah.
Stewart.
Well, yeah.
Arguably all of them, even Beasley. Beasley showed glimpses from the limited time that he was on the pitch that he could be a capable, Medine replacement eventually. What was it that you called him? A B-Tech Gary.
YTS
gas.
YTS, right. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I mean, arguably every single player that's out. I mean, when we were going on about signings before, we've needed another right back since Sterling left the building. We're 6 days to the end of the transfer window, and there's still only Jordan Gabriel that's a recognised right back.
Sadler said Conley is a right back. Do not question him, please.
I'm sorry, I disagree with him. He's entitled to his opinion. You know what I mean? Don't get me wrong, he's done lots of great things for this club, but I'm sorry, that's bollocks. Yeah. We need Connolly, especially now, because all our midfielders are injured in midfield. What happens now if Gabriel gets sent off or injured on Saturday?
Connolly plays there because he's our second right back.
Right, then who plays in the midfield because all the midfielders are injured? Do you see what I'm saying here?
Clueless
it's a farce. It's an absolute farce. This window has been shambolic.
There'll be no more.
It's not closed yet.
For you, Joe.
It's not closed yet. We can say the same thing in a week's time, but let them mess up in the week that they have. I think we could talk about this one forever. I will. Hold on. Sean's just come in. I actually like the fact we're sticking to our main right back target rather than compromising, which I don't know if he means Lions, who's not coming
Probably,
to us.
Yeah,
maybe next year. But
when does the Irish League finish? Isn't it like a different timetable to ours?
Yeah, but our window still won't be open regardless. So
sign him and loan him back. Get him when their season's over. Exactly.
Anyway, quick word. I've put the Kenny Dougal conundrum because a couple of fans got my back up in the podcast group saying that he messed up against QPR in terms of nearly conceding a goal, which I personally think it was Grimshaw's fault. But the underlying stats over the last couple of seasons or so, and I said already, I think his interceptions or tackles, he made over 100 and was in the top 3 in the Championship last year with a non-recognised partner for most of the season. He's immediately improved our team when he's come in. He's immediately improved our team when he's come on as a substitution against Reading, Swansea, Stoke, and of course the last 2 games as well. And that is Kenny Dougal is for me with Grimshaw, Marv's whoever, but Grimshaw and Dougal are the two most pivotal players in our side. Nick, and he should be first on the list. Not through default, regardless, because if Bettino and everyone was fit, he'd still be on there for me because he's made us exponentially better.
Yeah, I agree. I think Matt said something, and I'd said something similar to my friend a few weeks ago that, yeah, he's not going to go marauding forward. And I know he scored 2 in the playoffs and everything, but Kenny doing what he does, if he has the right players around him, then he doesn't need to be scoring goals. If you've got, I know they're injured at the moment, but Patino, Fiorini, whoever it is in there, doing the creative stuff, you know, Kenny doing what Kenny does is brilliant, and that's why he should be in the team for me. I get that he's not scored loads of goals, and people might be, for a centre midfielder, that's what you want to see, but that's not what he's about. And I think when he doesn't play, you realise what you're missing. For me, he's one of the first. I know he's not everyone's cup of tea, but for me, he's one of the first names on the team sheet for me.
Yeah, my point I made, I think that Nick's referring to, is that I think he gets stick because he did play poorly in some games last year. I don't think there's any way of disguising that. But what he was poor at was the things that he's not really what he's good at, So we had games last year where you had Dougal really trying to spray it about in the middle. We had Dougs on corners last year and free kicks and things because we had such a dearth of creativity. And as much as I love
5
Gary,
or 6 assists as well, though. So.
Well, he did, yeah. But as much as I love Gary Medine, God bless him, if you stick him on the right wing, you're not going to get the best game out of him. And if you tell Dougal to run the game and be the creativity, then you're going to see him fall short in that sense. But what he's good at, he's absolutely superb at, which is ratting, tackling, finding little bits of space, coming deep, taking the ball, playing those simple passes, which is absolutely fundamental to the formation we're playing.
And going back to the QPR one, I'd agree that he's been given the ball in a position where there's not a lot he can do with it. Grimmy's knocked it to him. There's a guy on him. He can't go out wide because they're being pressed. And it's like, oh, what do I do? So I'd put it more on Grimshaw than Kenny.
Yeah, I made the same point. Burnley on comms on Saturday. I watched the 90 back on Sunday, but listened to the game on Saturday. And the Burnley comms as well as Lancashire comms both said that that is a horrendous error from the keeper in terms of playing it out and not just clearing it when we were pressing them high at 2-0. And you got to think that Grimshaw's made a very similar error at 0-0. Maybe he's slow to turn, but there's 3 attackers on him and it's actually a horrendous opportunity squandered by them. But for me, he starts every week. Unless anyone disagrees, we'll move on from that. But yeah, I think he's been excellent so far this season. Arguably playing his best football under us as well. 2 more points to go through. Joe, I'll start with you. I've put Williams feeling the love. There's a couple of excellent pictures from Saturday. When Yates scores, Williams is literally both arms up in the air cheering. It looks absolutely buzzing. And then obviously at full time when he's giving it to the Burnley fans after we obviously pulled the game back. How has he fared for you? And I'll take you were happy to see that sort of attitude on Saturday.
I was, but all I will say is Preston hate Burnley as well. So
I get that, but it's wearing a
no,
tangerine
listen,
shirt, so.
I don't care who he supports. If he's playing well for us, that's all that matters. He's going to want to further his career. If he wants to end up playing for Liverpool, he's got to perform for us.
I think they need him at the moment.
Well, yeah. No, I'm not going to mention it. Anyway, getting back to the point, yes, he's been excellent. I think him and Marv, they're getting that understanding. It could be a very good partnership. I was a little bit worried when Keogh went, but I honestly think these two are starting to get a bit of an understanding together. And obviously that understanding will increase the more they play together. So, yeah, I think he's done a really good job. And anybody that's giving him stick because he's from Preston, is a Preston fan, just get over yourselves.
Matt, how do you think both of them have fared? I think they're still relatively, I wouldn't say awkward because we're used to the Rolls Royces between Richard and Marv's. Obviously last season it was just a joy to watch. They were just excellent at working together. They are forming somewhat of a relationship, and I actually think Williams has been much more consistent than my favourite player in a tangerine shirt, which is Marv's.
Yeah, Williams has done well. I was talking to my mate about him, who's a Liverpool fan, and he was actually quite surprised that I'd felt like he was seeming reasonably solid. I think they're forming a different partnership to Keogh and Marvin, but there's something kind of vaguely similar in the way Williams seems to be slightly more static, and Marvin seems to sort of tidy up a
Taking
bit
up
more.
that role a little bit, yeah.
And I think the other thing about the defence is we're a different side. We compare the defence last year and we say, oh, look, these defenders, they were doing such a good job, but we're a lot more open in midfield now. We don't have sort of two banks of four lining up with two defensive midfielders in front of them in the way that we had, and we're a lot more of an open side who sort of spread the play across the pitch a lot more and take more risks, and that's naturally going to put more pressure on your central defenders, isn't it? It's who knows? Say if you look at the Holloway team, who knows how the defence in the Holloway team would have looked if we'd have played 5-4-1 and gone for a very conservative approach. Who knows? We had a reputation for being, open at the back, but was that because of the players who were playing at the back, or was that because of the way we were playing at the time? And I think that, comparing last year to this year, you've got to wonder how Keogh would have looked in a much more open. We're not kamikaze, are we? But we're more that than we were on.
We are sometimes.
Well, yeah, but certainly there's more of that intent than there was under the predecessor. And you've got to wonder what Keogh might have looked like in a less controlled side, where his lack of pace might have been exposed more. And yeah, I thought Williams has done fine. I've not yet decided he's, proper class. This is a lad with a Premier League future or anything, but I think he's done fine.
No. He's in my opinion, he's not that, but yeah, I agree with you too. And Nick, just our final point before we talk about team selection. I think we all agree, unless you want to shake your head on camera, that Carey probably shouldn't have been sent off. Maybe the incorrect decision, but more annoyingly, not rescind after we saw Trippier's obviously go to VAR. Lundstrom, obviously horrendous tackle, get rescind, and that was much worse than Carey's. And for whatever reason, it's been denied.
Yeah, and I wasn't surprised though, to be honest. It's the inconsistency, isn't it? You see it week in, week out, don't you, with things like VAR and stuff. So yeah, I wasn't surprised, but it just puts us in a difficult place, doesn't it, in terms of what we've got in the middle of the park now. 3 games, and he probably would have been, involved in all 3 of those if not starting them. And you could argue it wasn't, we said on the last pod, it probably wasn't even a red in the first place when you look at it. We saw Man City the day after, and straight away the ref goes over, looks at Trippier's and just says, no, it's a yellow. And ours sticks as a red, and the appeal gets turned down. So, yeah, like I say, I'm not surprised, but it just leaves us very, very short in the middle of the park, unfortunately.
Yeah, Matt, and double blow because of Matsson's reaction. We obviously kick off a little bit. Marvel's be in front of centre protecting his side, but both clubs have been fined as a result of that.
Yeah, well, it's classic FA, isn't it? That they won't actually deal with anything important, but they'll fine clubs for a bit of a 30-second scuffle. I mean, by the law, it probably is a fine, but nobody died, nobody lost an eye.
Game's gone.
Well, yeah, nobody died, nobody lost an eye, but clubs nearly go bust left, right, and centre, and Oldham have been dragged down into the non-league by a rogue owner, and all of this goes on all the time, but they don't do anything, do they? But
priorities, Matt.
Those FA Christmas parties don't pay for themselves.
Right. Yeah, I think we're all in agreement that it wasn't a red, but we move on to the team selection, and I hand over the floor for a stat that got picked up at approximately 1 p.m.
Should
this afternoon. But
should we wait till we get to the strikers? Because I
okay,
think we all know
no
who the
problem.
stat might be about.
Yeah,
So I think we.
I'm sure.
I
I'm
don't
sure
wanna-
Beasley will appreciate it being mentioned on this pod.
Yeah, my Fez stat.
Right, I will get the picker up.
These should be really quick.
I was going to
They
say,
should
there's
be
not going to be a
really
lot
quick.
of debate here, is there?
It should be really quick. Let me just get my team up. I can't see the comments coming in. I can't see the comments coming in, but if you get your team selections up, I'll read them once I've stopped sharing my screen and I can see the comment section. But we'll move on to the team selection. Can you all see that? Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Pretty self-explanatory. Probably going to be no more than a couple of minutes. But my first question is to you, Nick. Do we play 4-2-3-1 like we did on Saturday with Corbin, you in the 10, or do you think he'll start 4-3-3?
Ooh, good question. I don't know. I think he will go with Corbinio again, I think.
Was it? It was 4-2-3-1 at the start, wasn't it?
Yeah, but it was
Pretty
Bowler
much,
in
yeah.
the 10.
It was-
Bowler in
yeah,
the 10.
Bowler.
Sorry,
Yeah.
apologies. Yeah, sorry, that's what I meant to say. Sorry, yeah, but what my point about that is, he probably won't start with Bowler in 10 again for his own
No.
admission. He said he got that wrong. That's what I meant. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
So
No, he won't do
you
that.
think it will be 4-2-3-1 again, or do you see him Corbin playing sort of in a more advanced position behind in front of Connolly and do win a 4-3-3?
Possibly.
What would you do? We'll just pick that.
I don't know. Corbinio, he took his goal well, didn't he? But he didn't do a great deal other than that, I didn't think, on the ball.
I've got a clear opinion on it, which is
I'd probably stick 4-2-3-1.
I've got a clear opinion on Corbin in the 10, which is your 10 needs to be technically gifted. He really does. I mean, I know Carey's not torn up any trees yet, but Carey is a classy footballer. Kai was a quality player technically. Every 10 I can think of in the Premier League is a quality player technically, and I just don't see Corbin having the touch to play that role. I just don't. Could be wrong.
But what I mean is, would you play 4-2-3-1 and Corbin you wide with Bowler in the 10 again, or would you play 4-3-3? If that makes sense, what formation would you start with, regardless of who's playing there?
What formation would I start with? If I was the manager for this game alone, I'd be very tempted to throw out both of those formations because we don't have any creative central presence at all. We just don't.
Okay.
So both of those formations rely on it.
Okay. You can, for the purpose of your stat and your stat only, you can pick the formation.
Well, should we have the stat now? Because and this is a one time only, because I'm absolutely on the Appleton train. I'm Sean is driving the train, and I'm stoking the boiler with the coal of enthusiasm. Appleton. However, we've lost Carey, we've lost the two on loan midfielders. We have no creativity in midfield. Not even Rob Apter is a number 10. He's a wide player. I don't see how we play that formation. So that would leave us with two strikers, would it not? Logically, as an alternative, leave us with two strikers.
Yes.
Now, one of those strikers could be Gary Medine, and people go, "Oh, Gary Medine, we don't need to play Gary Medine. Gary Medine hasn't scored any goals." But here's an interesting statistic for you. Gary Medine has played 118 minutes of football for us. Started against Reading, played a few minutes against Stoke, and played about 28 minutes against Burnley. In that 118 minutes, we've scored 3 goals. We've conceded none. So the goals per 90 minutes with Gary Medine equals 2.29 goals every 90 minutes that Medine's been on the pitch. Without Gary Medine, we've played 332 minutes of football. We've scored 2 and we've conceded 6. So the goals without Medine on the pitch is 0.54 per game. And the goals conceded without Gary on the pitch is 1.63 per game. If we take that over a season,
God, here we
goals
go.
per season with Gary would be 105. Goals per season without Gary would be 24.8. So that's my statistical argument for why, in this one-off occasion, it might be worth popping Gary Medine up front with Jerry Yates. They love playing together. We have no creativity in central midfield. How are we going to play 4-3-3 without a number 10? How? It's not just Gary Medine stuff. How are we going to play that formation without a creative footballer to make it work? 4-2-3-1, 4-3-3, whatever we call it, it relies on a player like that. We don't have one. So unless we pull one out of the bag tonight, unless I go online and Ben Mansford's doing a live thing from outside Bloomfield Road with a bag full of
his money,
saying I told you so, and players are jumping out of boxes, I don't see how we can play that way.
So what, you're going 4-2-4?
Well, look, I'd either go 4-2-4 or 4-4-2. I'd go for what we were doing second half against Burnley. I mean, whether you'd start like that or I'd go 4-4-2 because that's what the personnel suggests.
One of my favourite things about Saturday was Medine popping his head in to the press conference room and just saying "game changer," then walking out. All right, I've got no issues with us doing 4-4-2 for the purpose of a bit of fun. So I will.
He will not play 4-4-2.
He will not. But
our team, aren't we?
Who
This
cares?
is John always goes. It's our team. It's our team.
That stat is good enough for me. To just have a bit of fun. We never get it right anyway. So,
and look, generally, I think the super sub role for Gaz is perfect for him now. You know, I think that's what he does. He brings on, he changes games, he comes on, he's all cross because he hasn't started, and he, warms up angrily on the touchline, and then he comes on, he storms around, he knocks a few people. That's perfect for him. But on this game alone, I don't see how it's going to work.
All right, we're doing 4-4-2,
Right.
and I'm sure the back line doesn't change. Are we all in agreement in the purpose of time?
Agreed.
Yeah, picks itself, doesn't it? Unless Mitch wants to give us some Jimmy Husband stats.
Well, no.
He said he come on against Barrow. To be fair, he came against Thingy as well, didn't he? So, Gabriel, that's the one. Very good assist on Saturday. Just a point, I know you spoke about it on the pod, but I don't actually think everyone was going on about how Gabriel made an error for the second goal, but he's received a back pass, isn't he, which is off balance, and
yeah, it was going the opposite direction.
It wasn't it wasn't like the way that people were talking, saying Gabriel slipped and this, that, and the other. It wasn't a ridiculous mistake he made for both goals, and his assist was brilliant, advanced up the pitch as well. So enough of that Gabriel slander. He is up there with one of my favourite players over the last few years. So midfield, I would take it. This is filling in itself, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yep, Dougal and Connolly in the middle.
Oh, no virtue. I'm joking, by the way.
Connolly's in the defence, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. Yeah, because he's a right back.
Oh yeah, because he's a right back, of course.
Oh dear. Right, where is the man? Oh, the forwards, Joe. The forwards.
Yeah, get Lavery on the left. Why not?
I think that's the one downside of 4-4-2 is Lavery in a 4-4-2. I think will struggle more than a 4-3-3. I think that's the drawback of it.
Just give him that floating role. He can link up with the front men if he wants, and his tracking back was more than good enough at Burnley and QPR. Yeah,
unless you do go with more of it can become more of a 4-3-3 around Gaz, because we looked all right against Reading with Gaz in the middle, didn't we? And Yates and Lavery wide of him, and then you sort of, it's a bit more fluid. But yeah, I think that's the lineup, isn't it?
A more fluid 4-4-2 like his predecessor, but even more fluid.
Yeah,
I think that will actually be the 11, just not the formation.
Yeah, we'll just tweet something like it will be, but this will be fun based on this stat. Can you please wait, Joel? You could please just draft that stat into like a thread, like these statisticians do. When they say just my thoughts on Gary Medine, and it has to end with one of your incredible pictures of him painting the Mona Lisa or something.
I'll explain why I'm not coming to bed, because what I'm doing is I'm putting a Gary Medine related stat on the internet, and you understand perfectly well. My other thought
Sorry.
This is a wild thought. My other thought is we haven't got number 10. Probably on, I mean, this is one of those like mad thoughts that people come up with, and you go, why would you do that? But probably the most technically gifted footballer we have in an attacking sense outside bowler, and one that's more used to playing in a forward role, is Jerry. You know, I mean, is it ridiculous to imagine Jerry Yates playing in a 10? Is that a mad thought?
Not
He's
really.
extremely intelligent. It's not a stupid thought in any way, shape, or form. I just prefer him leading the line a little bit more.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
he does tend to drop deep a lot. Even last season in League One as well, he does drop deep quite a lot to receive the ball. So it wouldn't be the most alien of moves to do.
If he wanted to maintain the formation and not disrupt it, then who knows?
Leanne has put Kevin Stewart of the pod, by the way. What do you know, Tom? Your big Dougal lover says all 4 of and maybe even all 8 of the podcast group now is converted to big Kenny Dougal. But I think in the subject of time, unless anyone has got anything to add, that will be the end of the pod. Nick, anything for you, mate?
Nope. Thanks for having me, as always. It's been a pleasure.
Should we end with a quick score prediction, actually, Nick? You go first, mate.
1-1.
Okay. Affers?
Yeah, 1-1.
Matt?
2-1 to us. We'll go 1-0 down. It'll be really a bit grim for about 70 minutes, and then Appleton won't have done what we've said, and then the game changer will come on and everything will pivot again.
I'm going to go with a more chaotic game and say 3-2 to the Seasiders. I think it'll be quite end-to-end. It'd be nice to just win 3-0 and not have to worry, but I doubt that's going to happen. But that ends the preview show. Please join us for the post-match on Sunday or Monday. There will be a tweet out just informing. As ever, please like and subscribe on the YouTube channel to help us grow. And if you'd like to join the Patreons, just go on patreon.com/Seasiders podcast. You can join in the group, put some points up ready for the pod, and obviously just join in the banter and the general Blackpool chat. But from us at the Seasiders pod, we'll end with Up the Pool.
Up the pool.
Ooh.